So recently I made a couple purchases that have really improved the quality of my audio work. I've always kind of recorded on my Alesis mixer, which is a Firewire mixer and gets me a lot of inputs, but they don't sound terribly good. So I really wanted to improve the quality of the audio going into the computer. I have some decent microphones, but nothing super special, but I wanted to improve the sound of what I already have. So I bought a couple preamps. So the two things that I bought recently were this one here is the Warm Audio Tone Beast. It's the TB12 tone shaping discrete mic pre and DI. And then the other one I purchased is the Golden Age Pre 73. I got that from a coworker of mine who was selling it. So first is the TB12, the Tone Beast. This thing is pretty cool. It's a single channel mic preamp with a DI, but it has a lot of options. So it's got a DI input here and a mic preamp as well. You can switch between them here by hitting the high Z or the line button, depending on whether you're plugging in a guitar or what. Phantom power, which I have now because I'm using a condenser mic. You got a 20 decibel pad. I like using this a lot on guitars and drums and stuff. Engage the pad and then you can turn up the gain more and get a more colored kind of sound. This is your polarity, your phase switch here. The high pass filter works really well, but I think it might cut off a little bit too much low end. I'll show you here. So right now the high pass filter is not engaged. Here, now I'm going to switch it on. Actually, let me give it a second here so you can hear the background noise, the low end hum. I think the neighbor below me has their ceiling fan on, and you can hear it through my floor. Now here's with the high pass filter engaged. So really cuts out that low end, but also cuts out the low end of the voice. So I prefer to leave that off, and then I'll put my own high pass filter on in the computer. So next up we have the tone control section. So you have the option to switch between two different discrete amplifiers here, X731 vintage style, and then this X18 modern style. You've got the tone control here, which increases the gain by 6 decibels and changes the sound a bit. I have that engaged right now because I like that. You can change between vintage and clean capacitors. Right now I have it set on clean. You can bypass the output transformer. So here you can select between a nickel output transformer. So here's the nickel output transformer. Here's the steel output transformer. It's a pretty subtle difference here. Here's the nickel. Here's the steel. I kind of like the steel better. And then here you can bypass that entirely. Reduces the gain by 8 decibels. Not really sure why you'd want to use that. I like the color there. So right now I'm using the X731 discrete amplifier. Let's switch over to the X18. So now I'm using the X18 preamplifier. These changes are pretty subtle, but they're noticeable when you have the gain cranked up a lot, which I kind of do right now. But especially when you're recording things like guitars and drums and really loud sound sources, you'll notice the change or the difference between them a lot more. This has a little bit less low mids, and it seems like it might be a little bit brighter. Now we're switched back over to the 731, which to me kind of has a smoother sound. I like that. And then here, this is with the tone engaged. If I disengage this, here's the X731 without the tone engaged. There's no tone engaged on the X731 right now. Here's with the tone engaged. So again, kind of subtle, but I think it brings the sound forward a little bit more. Here's the X18 without the tone engaged. So the tone is not engaged here. Here's the X18 with the tone engaged. I kind of like the X18 without the tone. And I like the X731 with the tone. So there's a pretty big difference there. Hear that? So this is what I prefer, is kind of the high gain really upfront sound, the X731 with the tone engaged. And here's the X18 without the tone engaged. The gain's still up pretty high, but you can definitely hear a change in my voice there. So you can kind of see the kind of options you can get with this, and all sorts of combinations of, you know, with the X18 without the tone, with the nickel transformer, and the 731 with the tone, with the steel transformer. And you can change the capacitors from vintage to clean. This is really a subtle thing, but it's nice to have these kinds of options. They really, especially when you're in a studio environment, and with the separation, you'll hear the differences a lot more clearly. So here's the gain and saturation section. You can see here's our meter. I like how they have the skull and crossbones for when you're really driving the preamp. You can get a lot of distortion. You can really get a colored sound out of this. Right now, here is the X731 preamp pretty much cranked, and I got the output set considerably lower. So here's an example of the really kind of colored sound you can get. Preamp's distorting here. Let's switch over to the X18 here. So here's the X18. Now you can really hear a difference. It kind of thins it out a bit. With the 731 is a thicker kind of sound. And then you can also go pretty clean with it too. So we'll turn up the output more and turn the gain down, and you have a smoother kind of sound. Still sounds very nice, but I like to crank it up a bit. Maybe something like this. This is kind of how I had it before. Maybe a little more. I don't really want to. For my vote, if I was recording like rock vocals, I'd probably want it hitting the red a little bit there, but I try to get it just kind of bumping up against the orange. I'm not really speaking very loud right now either. I'm just kind of really close to the mic. Let's do some more gain tests. Hang on. I'm going to crank this sucker up. So it's really, we got a lot of gain going on right now. So here we go. So this is with the gain cranked up, the 731 preamp. So here's with the gain maxed out right now. So we got the input gain all the way up. Output gain is pretty low. We're on the X731 amp here with the tone engaged. Let's take that off. So here's without the tone engaged. The gain is up pretty high still. We're still hitting the red. Here's with the tone engaged. Here's the tone not engaged. Here's the X18 amplifier. Tone engaged on the X18. We're in the red. Tone disengaged on the X18, a little bit lower. Here's the clean capacitor. Vintage capacitor. Nickel transformer. Nickel transformer. Steel transformer. Nickel transformer. Steel. I'm definitely a fan of that X731. So now I'm using a different preamp. This is the Golden Age Pre-73. Another very popular kind of lower cost preamp. The last preamp, by the way, with the Tone Beast was $599. The Golden Age retails for, I believe, I want to say like $350 but yeah, it's definitely a great value. Supposedly the Warm Audio is modeled after API, and the Golden Age is modeled after Neve. I don't know about all that, but they definitely sound good. So I could have two preamps that are versatile, but add different types of color. So I have a lot of options. So here's the Golden Age. This doesn't have as many bells and whistles as the Tone Beast does, but still it sounds great. That's the you got your input gain here, you got your output gain right here, DI as well, phantom power, and low Z input. I do use this for a DI a lot too. Both this and the Tone Beast sound awesome on like bass DI. So right now, kind of like with the with the Tone Beast, I've got the input gain cranked up pretty high, and the output gain definitely is lower. Let's try a couple different settings here. So I'm going to turn the gain down a bit. This thing is kind of weird. It's got like this off position like halfway through the dial. It's kind of strange. So I'm lowering the gain. Now I'm back here lowering the gain. Crank up the output gain a bit here and you can get a cleaner sound. So now probably somewhere around there. That's so we can turn the input gain down a bit and crank up the output and just get a kind of a smoother, clearer sound. But you know me, I prefer something kind of like this. A bit more up close and detailed sounding. Sounds cool. But it really just depends on what you're doing. I record a lot of rock, so we like a lot of gain.